Alright, it's going. Yeah, my fingers are so big they hit the wrong buttons half the time. Anyway, greetings. Today I'd like to explain some things, you know. One is that it's really not my fault, although I'm going to apologize for the messages that have been coming. I mean, on the page where the video's at, I'll go ahead and I'll answer the comments, and, you know, in the reply box to each individual who's asking the question, and I'll post it. And it'll show that it posts. Once I get out of the page and I go to some other page to answer another question, I come to find out that back on that page I answered the question disappeared. And it's like I'm not answering you. So I just discovered that when I go into my comment section in my manager department of the my account, my YouTube account, that I found all these answers, replies that I had given, but they was on that page, but they weren't on the, you know, the individual pages when people click on them. So I do pray you forgive me for not answering if you've written. And right now there's so many comments that have been coming out that it's, and I've got 20 pages so far. This is my 21st page or video that I'm posting. So it's getting rather confusing for me to remember, you know, who I answered and who I didn't, on what page I answered and what page, you know, it just didn't show. So please forgive me, you know, but the importance is the message. And this message is not my message. I want to make that clear. The words that I'm speaking to you came from a lifelong search in the scriptures. It's just like anybody. Let's take a spelling bee, for instance, okay? You've got children that might be, you know, 7, 8 years old or 15 years old, and what they did in their life was had an interest in how to spell things correctly and how to enunciate, to be able to take certain words that they learned how to spell, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, whatever it is, and be able to apply it into a sentence somehow in their mind, or actually in their heart, because it's a man's heart that he thinks with, and the same thing with a woman, you know. Of course, sometimes, you know, and no offense meant, I've seen some women that just don't think. And I've seen some men that just don't think, but Solomon summed it up, I suppose, when he said, you know, 1 woman in 1,000 I have not seen, or no, it was 1 man in 1,000 I have seen to be wise, but 1 woman in 10,000 I have not seen wise, or, you know, something like that. I'm a horrible paraphraser, but that's why you should look it up yourself and figure out what I'm saying. But anyway, I applied myself like those people in spelling bees would, and I started reading the scriptures as soon as I learned how to read. I was born a Catholic, and we were brought up that if we had any questions about anything to do with religion, which I don't have anymore, I have a way of life. I don't want you to follow me. That's not why I'm doing this. I don't want any followers. I don't want your blood on my head. So that's why I'm bringing out these videos, to get your blood off my head and my hands, because I know what's true, and I'm blowing that trumpet. And I knew about this trumpet ever since I was around, I started learning to read when I was before kindergarten. I had 2 older brothers and my mom, and we were a close-knit family. We had my grandparents on the Rivette side had, you know, several children themselves, and they all had children, and we would get together on Sundays, and we had a party every Sunday just about. You know, there was a lot of us youngins. And some of us would bring books. I mean, we all had different interests. And anyway, as a result, I learned to read, and I was rather proficient at reading by the time I was 7 years old. In fact, it was by the time I was 8 years old, and of course, we had a Bible that's at there. Most everybody in the Catholic faith or organized religions do have a Bible there to, you know, to catch a lot of dust, and in many instances, you know, it's a dust trap. Something that, when you're dusting the house, it's something that you dust off. once in a while, because some of them had a family tree in the inside cover, you know, you could open it up and look at your family, how it's grown over the years. But as far as reading the book, you know, it's not something that was normally done, especially in the Catholic faith. I was the exception to the rule, and by the time I was about 8 years old, I had my own little Bible, and I would keep it tucked up between my mattresses, you know, between the box spring and the mattress, so that nobody knew, because I was supposed to ask the priest. And I did ask the priest. I did as I was told and instructed when I was a child, but I read these things, and that's why I had questions. And when a priest would answer me with some of the hogwash that he'd be spitting out of his mouth to the hungry, it appalled me. So I continued reading the scriptures, and then one day I believe I was around 9 years old. I know I was in the elementary school in North Broad Street School in Oneida, New York. And right next door to that school was a Catholic church, and then you had the convent there, you know, where the wives to the priests, the nuns, the priests believe they're Jesus Christ, and of course the nuns, when they take their vows, they become the wife to all the priests. So basically, Oneida Silversmith, or Oneida Silverware in Sherrill, New York, most people eat today off Oneida Silversmith's silverware. Okay, and this was created by this fella that had a religion where all the men was married to all the women. So every night a man would go to bed with a different woman. Nobody knew whose children they were, but they didn't see nothing wrong with it because they were all married. Well, the fella had to have a way to bring forth an income to feed that large a family, and that's where Oneida Silversmith came from. And then eventually the government said, well, you can't keep this religion. We don't even know who the children are. And then they were having problems with certain blood types where it was bringing problems in the children. But what that was actually from was sin. And when you sin, you should expect to have defects in your children, or you already got defects in your brain and in your heart, so what's the sense of not having it in your children as well? But anyway, when I was around 9 years old, on the porch in my mama's house, we were living in Durhamville, New York at the time. We had just moved in. So I might have been 9 or 10, I guess. And I was reading a Webster's dictionary, because I used to love to read, and I read the whole book, and I came up to the Y section, and there it was, Yahweh. And I'm like, Yahweh? It says it's the true name of the Creator. So, you know, I was at North Broad Street School in Oneida there, New York, and right next door was the convent and the church, and during certain classes, because we were in a Catholic community, they would send off students. I mean, if you was a Protestant or a Baptist or whatever, they wouldn't send you over to the Catholic Church for studies. But I went over there, and we used to love to steal the grapes, you know. I mean, it's really not stealing, because Yahweh says to leave the borders of the land, you know, for the poor and for the animals and the needy, the orphans and the widows and such. And they are to gather these things, but you don't find that much around here anymore. I mean, everywhere in Texas, everything is fenced off, and if you get on their land, they want to shoot you. But anyway, these grapes were so wonderful. I mean, they grew in bunches, and they was all the way down the fence row. And as we go through the fence, you know, the priest was always sitting there watching, so we tried to get somebody else not too bright to go up and grab grapes first. And then when the priest would leave the window to come out to grab the child to whoop his butt, or her butt, we'd grab the grapes and run and eat. Yeah, we're pretty despicable. But anyway, we went over to class, and they were talking about, you know, the nuns there. You know, they had classrooms, and they used to love to slap our knuckles when we're unruly with rulers, you know, the big old thick wooden ones. You know, they had these steel stripes down them. Sometimes they'd lay you right open. But anyway, they were talking about Lord and God and Jesus, and I said, well, why don't you call our Father by His true name? Well, what are you talking about? Well, His name is Yahweh. I seen it in the dictionary, you know, His name. Well, after going around and around with a nun, they wouldn't take too much for being unruly, which they considered my discovery of Yahweh's name as being unruly because it went against their principles, their teachings, their understanding. So the nun would whoop my butt and then send me to the priest, who I'd go through the same situation, explaining to him about Yahweh, and he'd whoop my butt. Send me back to the principal, who I'd have to go through the same thing, and he'd whoop my butt, and then he'd send me home to my mom, and my mom would whoop my butt, and, after I explained to her mom didn't understand a whole lot when it came to scriptures anyway. She was a good Catholic. She had no understanding of what scripture said at all, for the most part. She did have excellent morals, though. I mean, we did have morals. Weren't supposed to steal and that kind of stuff, but that's what most people do have. At the same time, they're saying, oh, you can't keep the law, but hey, you better not steal. Don't let me catch you stealing. But you can't keep the law, but don't you steal. Don't you commit fornication and these kind of things. So anyway, I'd get my butt whooped by my mom then, and I'd had to wait till my dad came home so he could whoop my butt as well. Alright, so these things, that's how my life went. My life has never been easy, because when I seen things I was supposed to do, I kept it regardless of what my friends or family thought. And as we were discussing in the last video, these things are basically like the bitter waters as well. I drank these bitter waters all my life. It's just recently where I've came to accept and came to understand that all the tests and trials that came on me didn't come just because Satan willed it to come on me, that she just jumped out there and started whooping on my butt like she's doing right now. I find it rather humorous what she's trying to do to stop this word, but as long as you're hearing the voice that's coming out of my mouth and the words that came from the scriptures, from Yahshua's own mouth, he became the living word. So when I speak the scriptures, I'm speaking Yahshua to you. And Satan thinks, just because I'm not answering you, but I am answering you, it's just you're not getting the message because something's going on. Satan's sticking her fingers in there. But what makes it funny is that I realize Satan can't do that unless Yahshua allowed it to be done. See, Satan's got to go to Yahshua before she can do anything at all against one of her, not her, but her ex-children, but against one of Yahweh's sons and daughters and brothers and sisters to Yahshua. Satan's got to go to Yahshua first to get permission to torment me. So I do find it cute in those areas, because why would she do this in the first place? Yahshua's not just going to say, hey, Satan, take a look at Al down there, man. Al-Yahnai seems like he needs you to do this to him. Now she goes up there to accuse me day and night. Oh, Yahshua, if you let me do this, well, he'd certainly, call you a jerk and tell you to kiss off and whatever else. But it don't work that way for me. My love and devotion is toward Yahweh and Yahshua. Yahshua has everything right now. The Father had put everything into his hands. You can't have two rulers. That's why it was done this way, prophesied to be done this way. If you have two rulers, you're going to love one and hate the other, or you're going to hate one and love the other. So Yahweh's not gone to an old folk home or anything like that. He simply gave everything to his son. And I think maybe Yahweh's just doing the tour of his creation. Maybe he's looking at it over and over, checking everything out, because he created it exactly as he wanted it. And it's basically like a big timepiece that's about ready, as I had mentioned in earlier videos. It's about ready to start chiming. The words that Yahweh spoke are about to come to pass. And I guess I'm going to wrap this video up just to let you know that I have drank these bitter waters, and it's about time that others are going to do it too. And like it says, about the woman that was clean, the woman that was pure, but she was accused of being guilty, but she wasn't, and she drank the bitter waters. Well, like it says, if however the woman has not made herself impure, but is clean, left undefiled, she will be cleared of guilt and will be able to have children. I've had 7 children, physically 7 children, 1 wife, 7 children, and they've all left me because they left Yahshua. And I had to go through a lot of mental research and study in my own heart and my own brain, wondering why in the world did this occur. And then I came to realize that those children were given to me, and so was the woman, to test me and try me, to be my test and trial to see if I'd say, oh, I love them more than anything. I know you messed up, honey, but I just love you so much. You know, it's okay. Baloney. You do the things that they did, you're not welcome at my table to eat, and neither are they. Now, I do have, 4 of them left, 4 children, 3 of them under court order to come visit me, for visitation rights, and they don't care all the time to come over either because they have to keep the law here, and they're not accustomed to keeping the law anymore because their mama lets them do whatever they want. And one of my sons, he joined the National Guard because he loves his enemy enough that he wants to help them too. So anyway, I've drank these bitter waters my entire life. I've been found to be one who's not guilty. Of course, I've done a lot of things that made me guilty, but it wasn't my intent to sin. I was deceived and I fell into these things. And that's what this pardon of Yahshua is all about. It's one thing if I know I'm not to fornicate and I jump in my van and I go out on a Friday night during the Sabbath and I hook up with some most gorgeous woman and have my way with her. That's one thing. That's not what Yahshua came to show you the pardon and the acquittal for. It's more or less, if you went out, you got so drunk and passed out and some woman took advantage of you while you're sleeping and then you discovered it, that's what you could be forgiven for. But, you shouldn't practice drunkenness either. So, the things I'm telling you, please evaluate in your own heart, do your own studies, look into the scriptures and see if these words actually came from Yahshua or not. And if they did, stop everything else you're doing immediately, repent of what you did, and give Yahshua your heart. So until next time, which will be only a few minutes when I change the batteries out of here, we're going to pick up where I just left off. So until then, I hope you have a great day, and I'll get this posted quick as I can.